Welcome to the Backyard Bourbon Broadcast. In this very special episode, Jeremy gets to talk with Shane Baker and Pat Heist, the co-founders of Wilderness Trail Distillery out of Danville, Kentucky. We'll be discussing their bourbon, their company, and their unique story. Thanks for joining us on this very special Distillers episode number 30 of the Backyard Bourbon Broadcast. Hey there, Backyardigans. It's Jeremy with the Backyard Bourbon Broadcast, and it's finally officially spring. This is part one of our interview with the Wilderness Trail Distillers. In this segment, Shane Baker and Pat Heist tell us the origins of their brand name and what made them decide to start their own distillery. They also talk about their family histories in Kentucky and what it's like to be an entrepreneur in the bourbon business. Well, thank you guys both for joining me today on this episode. This is a real honor. So, just tell us the quick facts about Wilderness Trail. You know, where are you located? How many employees do you have? What products you're making? Distillery tour hours, etc. Give us the lowdown on Wilderness Trail.
Okay. Well, we're located here in central Kentucky, in historic Danville, Kentucky. And we're just south of Lexington and just east of, say, Lawrenceburg, for example. We've got around 25 employees that supports our distillery operations. And we make a lot of Kentucky straight bourbon, Kentucky straight rye whiskey, rum, and then we make a vodka from our weeded bourbon distillate. And then we're open Tuesday through Saturday. Actually, we're open basically 7 days a week, but our tour hours are open Tuesday through Saturday, 10 to 5, and we are on the Kentucky Bourbon Trail Craft Tour, so you get your passport and work towards a prize. And the name of our vodka is called Blue Heron Vodka, and again, like Shane was mentioning, that's made from our bourbon, one of our bourbon distillates. And then the rum that we make is called Harvest Rum, and that's made from Kentucky-grown sweet sorghum molasses, and that's finished in used bourbon barrels.
Great. So kind of like a way to repurpose those barrels that have already been used.
Absolutely. Yeah, our rum is for a young connoisseur of either whiskey or rums, they would actually confuse our rum for a whiskey. It's very whiskey. It's very whiskey forward because of the way we kind of have a proprietary way that we actually age our rum in currently 4 Roses freshly dumped barrels. Post April 28th, we'll switch that over to our own barrels because we'll start to be releasing our bourbon. But it's got a really good influence of bourbon, just as our vodka. We try to. It's actually one, if not the only vodka made from a 3-grain, bourbon mash bill. And we leave that unfiltered. So everything we do has a whiskey influence to it. Very
nice. That sounds really good. Now, why do you call it Wilderness Trail?
Very simply, we pay homage to really where we live. If you were to look at our phone books, we live right here in the Wilderness Trace District of central Kentucky in the Bluegrass. So here in historic Danville is the birthplace of Kentucky. So the actual Wilderness Trail, Wilderness Road, Wilderness Trace, whatever word you want to use, is really the path that brought settlers from the colonial states, west. And Danville was one of the historic places that those settlements came to. So like Daniel Boone, brought settlers through the Cumberland Gap to settle these areas, and the path that they took, which includes right through here, is called the Wilderness Trail.
Tell me what made you decide to start your own distillery? What drew you to that passion?
Well, so we have another company that we started 12-something years ago called Firm Solutions. Firm as in fermentation. And we basically, so I've got a background in microbiology, biochemistry. Shane's got a background in mechanical engineering. And so we basically came together 12 years ago, started this company, Firm Solutions, and we supply yeast and other fermentation products to hundreds of other distilleries. So we've been doing that for over a decade, And, just kind of a logical progression of our business, we started the distillery back in 2013. So, our backgrounds are extensively in distilled spirits production prior to starting our distillery. And again, we're currently supplying yeast to hundreds of distilleries. And our band didn't make it. So, it wasn't because we were bad musicians. It was just, there really wasn't our dream that we were chasing. We were kind of doing that to shake off the monotony of our kind of our day jobs at the time. And although we did have a huge following of about 10, 12 people in Kansas. Yeah. So a lot of our customers, as we traveled around the country, they became our largest fans. So, well, and
right.
Another thing to kind of clarify a little bit, we weren't like your typical band. I mean, we actually had real jobs. I was a medical microbiology professor, and Shane was in business with various Fortune 500 companies. So we weren't the typical band driving around in the beat-up station wagon. We actually had real jobs.
Right. Had places you had to get to after you got done with the gig the next day, right?
That, I think we always had just a strong passion and respect for really what Kentucky's known for. If you live in this state, bourbon is just, every second word, it seems like, and even more these days. So my family, has been in distilling here in Kentucky since the 40s. And so I grew up, in a whiskey family. As a matter of fact, my grandmother retired from Sister Weller, and she started at the Canada Dry distillery at Camp Nelson when she was 14 years old. So she spent, 50 years in the industry, and growing up, I got to see her, involved in her career in the industry, and it just, it was always kind of something in the back of the mind, like, we could do this one day. But we recognize that it takes a lot of capital to do what we do, and we were just two broke family guys when we started Firm Solutions. So it took us a while to get the fortitude together to chase our next dream.
Right. Well, that ties into my next question. I've known a few entrepreneurs, and they always say, that passion to pursue that dream drove them to work 80 hours, so they didn't work just a 40-hour job that they wouldn't really care to do, because that dream pushed them continually. Did you guys found that to be true as well in your own situation in creating this distillery?
Absolutely. I think any entrepreneur, that'll be their standard answer. We work 7 days a week, even though our operation is also, kind of moving 7 days a week. We're always growing, so there's always things to do. You always want to be involved in especially when you're a small business, you're involved in everything. So we often kind of joke when people ask us about, do you ever take vacations? And we're just like, what? Vacations? Those are really just days with less work. So, I think when you're an entrepreneur, you know what you're signing up for, and as long as you enjoy what you do and have a passion for it, it doesn't seem like work to us. Well, and the other thing is, when does the work day really end? I mean, like I said, we've got hundreds of, not only we got our own distillery run here, and we've got our other business where we're literally, we got hundreds of other distilleries that depend on us from day to day for troubleshooting, and those guys are running, 24/7. So, it's not uncommon to get calls late at night or on weekends or whatever. So, that's another part of it. Is there's really no escaping it. I was gonna say our highest cell phone bills are when we're on vacation. That's usually when everything happens, or that's when everybody thinks that, hey, I can get a hold of them today.
Well, I imagine, if it's a true passion, you don't get a vacation from that. You'll constantly be thinking of something.
Oh, yeah, that's pretty much the nature of the beast. And and honestly, that's been kind of the good and bad of chasing your dream or being an entrepreneur or running, especially a distillery, because it involves attention all the time. So, it's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of sacrifice. not only from the family standpoint, but other things. But it's very rewarding, in the end when you're seeing the fruits of your labor come to play, and kind of we've seen our operation grow here and mature just as our whiskeys have.
Yeah, so we started off making about a barrel of whiskey a day, and we're completing an expansion right now. It's going to take us up over 200 barrels a day.
Wow. That's got to make you happy.
Yeah, that and a little gray hair, but
yeah, we'll be even happier when we're actually selling some whiskey. We haven't yet to sell our first bottle, so next month we'll have our first. We got a good bit of juice that's into 4 years old, and so we're actually releasing our first bottles next month.
Where will those be sold at? Is it across the country, or just there in Kentucky, or where are you distributing things?
Well, right now, again, we're kind of the unique element in the industry right now, at least what other people tell us. We actually started off with an original goal of aging our bourbons and our rye whiskeys to around 6 to 8 years before we ever released them. We just, growing up in Kentucky, that's what we believe are mature bourbons. And so over the years, we've had a lot of better palates than ours. A lot of people from the Whiskey Hall of Fame to people like Bill Thomas at Jack Rose Dining and all these different places who have really not only encouraged us to double down on our production because the way they like the way our whiskeys taste, but also the fact that they were finding barrels of like, well, why aren't you guys releasing these now? So we decided to do a very limited release of a 4.5-year-old and then a 5.5, until we get to our main release at 6 years. So our main release at 6 years, which will be 2020, we will be more of a regional, moving towards a national kind of brand release. But for this year and next year, you will only find our stuff pretty much here in Kentucky, and then in some special barrel pick releases over in the D.C. area with Jack Rose.
Join us next time for part 2 of our interview with the co-founders of Wilderness Trail Distillery, where we talk about the challenges of starting a distillery from scratch and why bourbon has become so popular lately.